The best way to learn a language? Immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards for you this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. For instance, I've been using Babbel's convenient courses to help me learn basic conversational skills in German while I'm getting ready for a little trip I'm planning. It's not a language I'd ever studied before, but I find the lessons really easy and kind of like hand-holding me through learning a completely new language to me. And it's reassuring to know that with the help of Babbel, I'll be able to greet people, order food, and ask for directions without having to consult language apps while I'm in Deutschland. I'm still learning. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold. Plus, all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/vulgar. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/vulgar, spelled BABBEL.com/vulgar. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Hi, this is Rob Benedict.
And I am Richard Spate. We were both on a little show you might know called Supernatural.
It had a pretty good run, 15 seasons, 327 episodes.
And though we have seen, of course, every episode many times, we figured, hey, now that we're wrapped, let's watch it all again.
And we can't do that alone, so we're inviting the cast and crew that made the show along for the ride. We've got writers, producers, composers, directors, and we'll of course have some actors on as well, including some certain guys that played some certain pretty iconic brothers.
It was kind of a little bit of a left field choice in the best way possible.
The note from Kripke was, he's great, we love him, but we're looking for like a really intelligent Duchovny type.
With 15 seasons to explore, it's going to be the road trip of several lifetimes. So please join us and subscribe to Supernatural then and now.
So hello, and welcome to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. And I have some things to say before we get going on this episode, but I don't want my guest to have to sit there quietly. Allison Epstein is here with me. Welcome, Allison.
Hello, Tits Out Brigade. I'm very excited to hear all of Anne's announcements.
So the first one, well, I'm glad that you're here for this one because it's sort of not a trigger warning, but just sort of like a, here's what's up. This is a podcast where like there's new listeners to this podcast. I know there's always new listeners, but there's been like a recent larger influx of new listeners. So I just want to make sure they know what's going on so they're not startled at any point. We're going to swear on this podcast. I'm probably going to make fun of every country, including and especially England and the United States. So if you're a person who is just like not wanting to hear that happen, like even though today on this episode, like spoiler, we're talking about Russia, like I'm confident at some point I'm going to say something making fun of England and or the United States because...
Yes, I guarantee you will.
Exactly. So even if you're like, well, this will be a safe episode where Anne's not going to slander my country I live in, you know what? You're never safe. You're never safe. So I just want people to know that, you know, people who might be new to this podcast and they're expecting, I don't know what they're expecting. They're expecting some sort of very thing where we just read facts. No, there's a lot of opinions, and all of our opinions are not about what we're actually talking about. There's tangents, there's side talking. And this isn't to be like, this is just so people know that's what to expect, basically. If that's not your thing, God bless. There's other podcasts. But that's what this one is like, and I just want to make sure people know. Allison, as a person in America, Do you have anything you want to add about the way I slander your country?
Anne is Canadian, which is close enough to slander my country. I am American, and so I can slander my country with impunity. That's what we fought a revolution for, and I plan to do it as much as I can.
What I find interesting is that I have, this is all inspired by a message I got by somebody who did not appreciate the way that I spoke about the United States in a previous episode, which was an episode about Scotland. And I thought, you know what? I just did 25 hours of Scotland-based podcasts where I think relentlessly, often Allison was with me. We made fun of Scotland, and no one in Scotland complained about that. So
we're a very special nation of people who are uncomfortable when it is not about us.
Yeah. And this podcast is really not about you. I know that that's also the largest proportion of listeners are in the United States. So you know what? You're all cool. The people who aren't into this podcast, God bless. Okay, so that's my first announcement. My second announcement, I've got like several instructions, calls to action for the Tits Out Brigade, which is, if you're a new listener, then you, the listeners of this podcast, if you're listening to this, you are now part of the Tits Out Brigade Nation. The second call to action is that Allison's book has just been published and everybody needs to go and get a copy of that book. Allison, can you talk about your book?
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me be the call of action. It is called Let the Dead Bury the Dead. It is an alternate history 19th century Russian novel following a cast of 4 characters who find themselves pulled into a social revolution against the empire, possibly by supernatural forces. Who is to say? It's adjacent to historical fantasy. It's very queer. I had a lot of fun, and it is now terrifyingly available wherever you buy books.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize, of course you mentioned it, but just in case people missed that, like the book is very gay. It is. Yeah.
It is an Allison Epstein classic, which means there are 3 token straight people in this book. And there's 4. There's 4 straight people. I take it back.
Okay. You know, a little representation for that underrepresented class, straight people. So your book is out. It's called Let the Dead Bury the Dead. And do you know where it's out? What countries people can get it in?
It is available in the US and Canada right now because foreign rights are difficult. If you are looking for it in another country, you can feel free to reach out to me and we will see what we can. Right now, US and Canada.
Get your hands on Allison's book and read it. So it's available. There's a book. There's also the ebook. Is there an audiobook, Allison?
There sure is, and the audiobook kicks ass. So we love it.
Yeah. Well, and these people listening right now, they all clearly like listening to things. So listen to Allison's book. That's also available. And then also, I wanted to say, people getting your hands on the book, if you are in Canada and the US, other countries, sit tight. You know, the book is available wherever you get books, but that may include your local public library. Now, so if you're getting your book from the local public library, first of all, you go to your library's website, you search for Allison Epstein, Let the Dead Bury the Dead, you place your little hold. If you go to your library's catalog online and the book is not listed, then what you do is you look somewhere on that website, there's a thing being like, contact us. And you punch that button and you say, buy a copy of Let the Dead Bury the Dead by Allison Epstein. And I know as a person who knows about public libraries, when the library gets a suggestion of people being like, please buy this book, the library 9 times out of 10 is going to buy that book. So,
and we love libraries here on this podcast. We are big 100% library stans. So
I do want to say, if you're listening to this from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, guess what? Book, ebook, e-audiobook, I happen to know, all available to place holds. So yeah, so Allison, get Allison's book. This entire episode is a Trojan horse that I'm not hiding. And the purpose of it is to get everyone to buy Allison's book.
It's a Trojan horse, and the Trojan horse is wearing a t-shirt that says my book comes out this week. So it's not really very sneaky.
No, it's not very good. Neither was the actual Trojan horse. What would this be? Instead of a horse, what would it be? Would it be a llama? I'm not sure.
It's 20,000 llamas, each of them wearing a shirt.
Wearing a t-shirt with your book on it. Yeah, we're subtle like that. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is also related to Allison's book. This is your next call to action, Tits Out Brigade, which is, I'm so delighted to announce, the first ever Vulgar History Book Club Experience. So this is a book club experience. This is something people have suggested for a while, and I've never really thought about. I never figured out how to do it exactly, but lots of people like books. I obviously like books. You have a book. So we're going to be doing this online book club experience inspired by the Oprah's book club in the sense of it's going to be all online. So what you do starting today, actually, when you listen to this episode, if you go to vulgarhistory.com/book club there's going to be all the information there about how to join and what it's going to be. So yeah, we're going to be talking about your book, Allison. You don't have to be involved at all. I know you're busy.
I want the listeners to know that Anne messaged me 2 days ago and at about 10:30 in the morning and said, how do you feel about doing a book club with the Tits Out Brigade? And I was in a work meeting. And at about 11:30, she said, sorry, we're already doing it. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. So really delighted about this. It happened entirely while I was not paying attention.
Yeah, no, it's all you're busy promoting your book. Actually talk about that. Where are you going to be promoting your book? If people want to see Allison in person, you're going to be making appearances, right?
I am. If you happen to live in or around the Midwest of the United States, I have a couple of events coming up. We did one yesterday. So sorry if you weren't there. But I also have an event coming up in Wisconsin, an event in Michigan. I also have a very exciting virtual event coming up very soon that I am tossing this to Anne as a segue. But if you want to know where I'm going to be all the time, you can check my website. It's all up on there.
Which is AllisonEpstein.com. So the very exciting live event that's coming up, this is my fourth call to action. No, third. Third this episode, which is we're going to be doing a live stream of Vulgar History. Well, Vulgar Peace Theater, technically. Live stream coming up this Saturday, which is, I want to say the dates correctly, which is the 21st, October 21st at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. That is the time that it is where you are, Allison, in Chicago.
And for all other listeners, if you type 5:30 p.m. Central Time into Google and then also your time zone, it will tell you what it is, because if we try to do the time zones, we'll do it wrong. So,
yeah. Absolutely, 100%. So 5:30 p.m. Central Time. You could go into your little thing and be like Central Time to Peru, Central Time to Ireland, Central Time to Saudi Arabia, wherever you are, and you can see what time that's going to be. But also, if that's a weird time for you, if that's like 1 a.m., the video will still be there afterwards. And so the way that you can attend this live show is going to YouTube. If you go to YouTube and look for Vulgar History and then live events, that is where it will be. Both if you go on Saturday, October 21st, or also after that, if you just look up the live events.
We should tell the people what film we are watching for this live show, because it is highly requested, I believe.
Yeah, no, and I believe you just watched it as well, Allison. So don't spoil your thoughts. But it is the 2018 movie Mary Queen of Scots, starring Saoirse Ronan, Margot Robbie,
David Tennant and his 8,000 pounds of fake facial hair.
David Tennant plays John Knox, and David Tennant, his entire body weight's worth of fake hair, both on his head and
so
on
much.
his face. He's basically in a Chewbacca costume in this movie.
He must be so hot and so tired the whole time.
Yeah, I think he would have had to, I don't know, do just a lot of sort of strength exercises to be able to support that much fake hair every day on set. But yeah, so it's a 2018 movie, Mary Queen of Scots, starring Saoirse Ronan. I think it's a perfect way to sort of celebrate the end of the never-ending Mary Queen of Scots season. But there's characters like you just watched. I watched it when it came out in 2018, but I haven't since. But Allison, there's characters in it who we all know from the story.
Yes. Anne is coming in with all of the facts still in her brain from this season, and I'm coming in with unsubstantiated Darnley feelings because they did things to this Darnley that I have thoughts and opinions about.
Oh yeah, Darnley is in the movie. Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart is in the movie. Not the actual Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart, but the character Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart.
Jewel Torches of our heart, David Rizzio.
All of our friends are there, so it'll be interesting. Anyway, so that's going to be on the 21st. So everybody, so just to recap, our calls to action are, well, firstly, it's just like, I'm going to slander the United States. Secondly, get your hands on Allison's book. Thirdly, vulgarhistory.com/book club to talk about this book, Allison's book, with the other rest of the Tits Out Brigade. And then fourthly, live episode this Saturday, October 21st, 2023, 5 p.m. Central Time. Those are all of my announcements. I know it's a lot. We're going to repeat them all at the end as well. And there's going to be a fifth call to action midway through this episode, but stay tuned. You know what? The Tits Out Brigade, they're there. They're ready for action.
It's a brigade, and they gotta act. That's what a brigade is for.
A brigade doesn't just sit around. Yeah. That's not a brigade. That's just a cluster. So today is a special episode for me because I didn't have to research. Allison did all the research. And so it's going to be a reverse of our usual dynamic. Allison telling me a story.
Yes.
This is similar to one of the most popular episodes of the show, actually. So This Asshole Napoleon, which was also you telling me a story. So this is going to be you telling me a story. And so what is the connection between the story you're telling me and your book? I assume there is one.
There is. It is a somewhat tangential connection because my book takes the Romanov dynasty of Imperial Russia and I kind of imagine a splinter branch out of it. And I did this because I wanted to combine a lot of different historical events into one moment in time where all of these events were not actually happening. And so I was like, let's imagine this slightly parallel universe where things are almost the same, but not quite. And so this person does not actually appear in my book, but her vibes heavily inspire many of the characters who are in this book. I happen to love her very dearly in a way that, is as problematic as it is to ever love a historical character because they all suck. But the vibes are impactful.
And what is the name we're using for this person?
I am referring to her as Empress Elisabeth, which I am aware is confusing for listeners of this podcast who already know Empress Elisabeth of Austria, but we call that Sisi, and this is Elizabeth. So it is two separate people.
And she's also called sometimes Elizaveta Petrovna?
Elizaveta Petrovna, that's her Russian.
Okay, but she's Empress Elisabeth of Russia.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, and so, well, we're going to get into this, but just to tease the connection, if you've watched The Great, the TV show, guess what? She does appear on that show. Asterix, kind of.
Technically, she is technically an appearance in that show.
Yeah.
Listeners of Vulgar Peace Theater will know that I have a blood grudge against the show The Great. It is the one I would fight in the street. So this is partly why.
Yep. Okay, so we are going to talk about Elizabeth. So take it away.
Yes. So I'm going to tell the story of Empress Elisabeth of Russia. But in order to tell the story of Empress Elisabeth of Russia, I have to step back a couple of steps and tell you kind of where we are and who her parents are and what's going on in the world. I will try to be brief about that. But generally speaking, we're talking about this story starts when Elizabeth is born, which is 1709 in Moscow, which at that time was the capital of Russia. In about 3 to 5 years, it wouldn't be, and then it would be again, but that doesn't matter. Elizabeth was the third and final surviving child of Peter I, also known as Peter the Great.
Okay, I have a question. Sorry, just to stop you. Are all Russian leaders called the Great? Is that their last name?
No. No, just Peter the Great and Catherine the Great. And it's because they were a little bit extra megalomaniac and they decided to go with that.
So Elizabeth is not AKA Elizabeth the Great?
No, she's great in my heart, but not in her title.
Okay, so her dad, Peter the Great, she's just
Liz.
she's just Elizabeth. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
So in terms of and you might be able to help me out here in terms of other vulgar history things going on at the time. I tried to go through and remember who was early 1700s in previous vulgar history episodes. Queen Anne, the favorite, was currently queen in England. So here we are back in England again. This is also a couple of years before Lana Wood Johnson's favorite person, Maria Theresa, Marie Antoinette's mother, and Chief Edward Bitch in charge.
So what year are we? I'm just bringing up my spreadsheet. 1709. Let's see. You know who was born in 1701? Mary Toft of the Rabbit Pieces.
I was going to say unfortunate rabbit lady. Oh no.
Yeah. So that was happening. But there was some. I don't think Russian, but there was some European people involved in that. All those dirtbag doctors who were imported. So that's around then. Let's see. There's not a lot happening vis-a-vis vulgar piece theater people. Let's see.
That's what I was realizing. The 1700s is a quiet vulgar history period.
No, Flora MacDonald from Scotland. She was born in 1722. So we've got a little, so that era as well. But early 1700s, we don't have a lot going on, although there is going to be a crossover with somebody who was born in 1728. But I'll wait until we get to that part of the story.
That is a spoiler for hopefully within the next 2 hours, because I'm going to try and keep us on track.
Yep.
So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about Peter the Great because I find him exhausting. But we do need to know a little bit about him for Elizabeth's story to make sense. He's one of the 3 Tsars of Russia that most people in America have heard of. The other one is Nicholas II, who is the dad from the cartoon Anastasia, the last of the Tsars.
Anastasia.
Yes. Mhm.
Yep.
And the other one is Catherine the Great from the TV show The Great, as we've established. Some people have heard of Ivan the Terrible. No one knows anything about Ivan the Terrible except that he sucks. So
I've heard that, but I would just sort of put him in a category of like Vlad the Impaler. Just I couldn't have told you what country he was from, what era he was from.
yeah.
Okay.
So he's like 3.5. But anyway, Peter the Great, Elizabeth's dad, became Tsar of Russia in 1682 when he was like 10 years old. And he was actually co-Tsar with his older brother, Ivan V, who every source that I find about Ivan V says something deeply ableist and awful about him. But it's what historians are guessing now is that he may have had Down syndrome or something similar. All you can imagine how awful all of the historical sources are talking about this person. They are.
But so this is why there was a co-Tsar situation, because his brother Ivan was, for whatever reason, not seen as being able to
rule
like
on
be
his own.
the guy.
Right. So Peter kind of came up as like
Yeah.
second Tsar, and then eventually he, kicked out the regent and did whatever and became actual Tsar in the late 1680s. So he's now all by himself. I'm bringing up his brother because he'll come back later. There's lots of tangential relatives in this story, but right now, when Peter is Tsar, his big project, the reason that he's known kind of outside of the things that he did, is his project was quote unquote westernizing Russia. He wanted Russia to be part of Europe, and he wanted all Russians to behave as if they were Germans, essentially. There's a lot of awkward Orientalist kind of racist things tangled up in that, and I'm not going to get into it for this story. But the point is, Peter was like, I'm going to revolutionize this country and make it the gateway to Europe. I'm going to make sure everyone dresses in European clothes. Nobody can have long beards because that's Russian and therefore that's uncivilized. And he decided he wanted to build a brand new European capital that would make Russia feel like Germany or France or Italy or whatever. And so he built St. Petersburg in his reign, named it after himself, like an asshole.
Wait, is he a saint?
He is not, but he could have picked any saint. And the one he picked was the one that happens to have his own.
Okay.
Also important for this story, Peter the Great, named Peter the Great because he was very important, also because he was reportedly 6'8" tall, which is fucking insane for the 1700s. But he was a very tall, very important looking man. So that's the context you need for Elizabeth's dad. More importantly, for the listeners of this podcast, probably is Elizabeth's mom, who's actually super badass. And if you ever want to do an additional Russian queen on this podcast, I highly recommend you look into her mom, Catherine I. So Catherine was born as a peasant in what today would be Poland, and she kind of worked her way up through possibly sex work, possibly relationships where it's not exactly clear in the sources, through the Russian army, and then eventually became the mistress of Peter the Great. So that's like pretty impressive for a girl just scheming her way to become like the queen of Russia. And she had 2 children with Peter the Great, both daughters, Anna, who was born in 1708, and Argyll Elizabeth, who was born in 1709.
Wait, you're going to clarify this, I think, but they were illegitimate daughters when they were born or not? Were they married?
They were not married publicly, Peter.
I'm sorry, be super secret sexy married?
There was a super secret sexy marriage between Catherine and Peter the Great, which we love to see on this podcast. But annoyingly for Elizabeth, we don't know if it happened before she was born or after she was born. So, like, was she technically legitimate? Was she legitimized after the fact? I don't know. No one really knows. And that's going to be a problem for her later.
Okay, but so did Peter have other children?
He had a first wife, and he had a son with his first wife. And the first wife did not like Catherine at all, as you can imagine. Then, that went badly. I think Peter and his wives had a total of 13 or 14 children, but only 3 of them survived past the age of like 6 or 7 because it's the 17th, 18th century, and that's unfortunately how it goes.
Yep. So, okay, Catherine, great, peasant girl, has these 2 daughters, secret, sexy marriage with Peter the Great.
Yes. And then she gets an actual, not secret, still sexy, public marriage in like 1712 when Elizabeth is 3 years old. So they are technically legally married, technically legitimized, but as we know from all of history ever, technically legitimized is not the best kind of legitimized. So
Especially for a girl.
help. But fortunately, Elizabeth was kind of awesome as a kid. She was reportedly Peter's favorite kid, even though he had a son, which I think is dope. She was super smart. She spoke 4 languages, French, Russian. I think she was a dancer. She loved to party. She was like the fun kid you would want to hang out with at the club. And much like our girl, Mary Queen of Scots, who we just talked about, she was like really striking. She was also 5'11" because her dad was 6'8".
Mhm.
So there's just like this tall, gorgeous party girl flirting with everybody and having a great time. And people are like, ooh, sheiks. We love her. Her sister, Anna, was shorter, very, very shy, did not want to be out in public at all, and kind of would have rather stayed at home, like with her books, having a nice time.
I'm sorry. I know that this is Russia, but this is giving me like Anna and Elsa from Frozen vibes, but reverse,
But
in the
reverse.
sense that instead of Elsa staying inside because of her snow powers, here it's Anna staying inside because of her just introversion.
Yes.
But yeah, you've got the fun sister who wants to party, and then you've got the other sister
No,
who's
thank
like
you. No good. I'm
wants
good.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
of them as the Lydia and Mary Bennets of Russian history, which is just like one of them's out flirting with soldiers, and the other one's like, I'm going to stay in here and play my harpsichord. So those are the
Yep,
girls we're
yep.
working with. And because Peter the Great is so jazzed about Europe at this point, and he's got 2 daughters, any dad's going to be like, okay, what kind of advantageous marriages can I make for these 2 girls? For Peter, it's what specifically European marriages can I make for these girls so I can build alliances with Europe and everyone can know how civilized and Western we are. Ugh. So he has a reasonably good time doing this with Anna. She gets engaged to a German prince who will come up later, but I don't remember his name and I don't remember where he is in Germany because Germany exhausts me.
Yeah, no, this is like Lana Johnson is not here on call.
I know. She's probably listening at home screaming at me. She's like, the German princes, they all matter. I'm like, they don't matter. It's a German guy.
Yeah.
But for Elizabeth, Peter's like, this daughter rocks. I'm gonna really like aim high for her. And so he tries to get her engaged to the Dauphin of France, which is the son of Louis XIV, who is the Sun King, aka the fanciest man in France. So this is like very impressive. It would be great for Russia if this worked out. However, as we talked about a second ago, technically legitimate is not going to do it for the King of France. And so he writes back, says, like, this is very obviously the daughter of your Polish mistress. You can't fool me. Come back when you have a legitimate daughter. And Peter's all mad about it. But he's like, there are so many German princes in this country that I'm going to grab another one. And so he grabs a random German
Yeah.
man for Elizabeth, and everything seems to be fine for the time being. Except then we enter the part of the story where my notes just say, everything goes to shit for Elizabeth. She has a very, very bad 2 years in her life. In 1725, so she'd be in her late teens at this point. Her father, Peter the Great, dies. I did not know this until researching this story. Peter the Great died of gangrene of the bladder, which,
Oh.
no, I don't even know what that means, but it sounds horrible. I don't want it.
Mm-mm. No.
So now there's no czar on the throne of Russia. And cool fact, Peter's second wife, Catherine, steps up and becomes the first empress of Russia. She's Catherine the First.
Yeah, no, I just learned that from episode 1 of The Great, the TV show, which I just watched, where they explained in Russia, unlike any other country I've ever looked at on this podcast ever, when the king dies, his wife can become the new czar. It doesn't necessarily go to his child.
Yeah. Especially when his children are fairly young and his wife is a badass who just like fought her way up from the Polish countryside to like.
What was she? She was like a Polish peasant girl, and now she's just like, step back,
the first
bitches.
empress of Russia. She's like, you want to go? Let's go. Like, good for her. And this is another reason why I beef with the show The Great, is because they're pretending that like women are so subservient to their husbands in Russia at this time. And I'm like, we had Catherine as an emperor like not that long ago. Like, women were doing stuff. Unfortunately, Catherine I was only Empress of Russia for 2 years because she died of tuberculosis, because it is the 1800s and a Volker history episode, so someone has to die of tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis is a guest star almost every week on this podcast.
So that was 1727. And later in 1727, the random German man that Elizabeth was engaged to also died. He died of smallpox, which I think is basically spicy tuberculosis. It's basically the same thing.
So they never actually got married, her and random German guy.
No. They were engaged and it was all ready to go. And then her parents started dying and then he died. And so like things were probably.
Okay.
So at this point in the story, Elizabeth is 18 years old. She's an orphan. She's newly single. And she's like, okay, I'm still pretty close in the line of succession to the Russian throne, right? Like both my parents are dead and I am a daughter, but I'm the direct child of Peter the Great and everyone loves me. So, you would think maybe the throne could come to me. Gender doesn't matter quite as much in this situation. But it mattered that she was only technically legitimate. That was the problem we were working with. So instead of giving the throne to Elizabeth, who was cool and well-liked, they gave the throne to her half-cousin, Peter II. So this is the son of Peter's son with his first wife.
Oh, the first wife. Okay, yeah, he had the son. So Peter had the son, and then that son had a son.
And I assume Peter's son did not live very long, because otherwise it would have gone to him. I don't remember actually how he died. But anyway, it went back down the legitimate branch of the family, which makes sense. I'm not mad about that one. That's fine. The King of France was probably like, yeah, absolutely. This is a legitimate child. I have no problems with this. But don't worry too much about that part of the family tree, because Peter II dies a year later. So.
Okay. So everybody is called Peter in the story. I just wanted to note that.
There are actually only 2 Peters. There is about 2 of everybody in this story.
Okay. So only 2 Peters. Okay. There's not, because I was waiting for you to be like, and so the next Tsar was also called Peter?
No, Scotland has 1 name, and that name is James. And Russia has 3 names, and it's Peter, Nicholas, and Ivan. Those are the 3 names we have.
Okay. Okay.
So Peter II, the legitimate child, he's dead. And so you would think, okay, now we've gone all the way through that branch of Peter the Great's family.
Wait.
Yes.
Question. Do we know what Peter II died of? Was it mysterious circumstances?
I did not write it down. It was not. One assumes it was tuberculosis.
Well, because I was like, is this Elizabeth being like, fuck you?
I don't think so. I think at this point, she's like, you know what? I get it. Sure. Go through the legitimate branch. No problem.
No, it's true. And I think we've seen, well, this is Russia, but we've seen in other places, the young men just tend to be very sickly and die, while the women are hearty and don't. And that's why it's dumb that patriarchy exists.
Yes.
Anyway, okay.
So they have to go find somebody else to replace Peter II. And this is where, if I was Elizabeth, I'd be pissed off. Because do you remember Peter the Great's older brother who had Down syndrome?
Mm-hmm.
They went back to his branch of the family and went down to his daughter, which was a woman named Anna. This is the second Anna in this story. But
okay,
like,
2 Annas, yes.
Let's go to your half cousin, Anna, the daughter of Ivan V. She can be king.
Wow. So even a woman, I could see if you go weirdly in the family tree just so you can get to a guy,
right.
But you go weirdly in the family tree. And it's so interesting, but also women are cool in Russia at this point.
They're so she's the second female emperor of Russia, Empress Anna. She's got I'm sorry to keep bringing it back to England for reference points, but I think of her as a Mary I sort of person, where she's not great, not terrible, but she had a really off-putting personality. And so when you read about her in history, people are like, oh, she sucked so bad. And it's or was she just a woman who didn't smile very often?
Yeah.
The point is, Elizabeth now, the daughter of the Tsar, is why are we dancing all over the goddamn family tree, finding all of these other people? I'm right here and I'm awesome. And not only can she not rule the country, all of this dancing around her is making it really hard for her to find a husband too. Because no one wants to marry the illegitimate black sheep of the Russian family when you could get one better and cooler on the family tree. So she's tired and annoyed and a party girl and loves to flirt. And she's like, okay, so you know what I'm going to do now, obviously. Go have an affair with someone in the army because I am Lydia Bennet and I know no other way to be. So she goes and tracks down a hot army sergeant. His name is Alexander Shubin. And she's like, okay, we're going to have an affair, but no one tell Empress Anna because she'll be pissed off. Of course, Empress Anna finds out. She's like, fuck you for being with an army sergeant in my court. How dare you? And he is exiled to Siberia. R.I.P. Alexander Shubin. I'm sure he was cool.
Can I tell you something about Siberia? Now, I think this is true. I've heard it repeated enough times. I think it's true. But I believe that Saskatchewan, where I live, and Siberia are similar latitudes. So whether like we're going to send them to Siberia because it's like the coldest, most godforsaken place in the world. And I'm like, so is this. So I feel sort of a kinship with Siberia in that way.
Unfortunately, you were in a lovely snug house and not in a prison camp. So you are doing better than this guy was.
Yep.
But that's hilarious. I hope you take great pride in that.
I do. Yeah.
So Elisabeth is now down a secret lover, but she is not to be deterred. She's like, I'm going to find another secret lover. And this time she hit the jackpot because she took up with a man whose name is Alexei Razumovsky, and he's my favorite person in this story. I love him so much. He was much like a favorite of the podcast, Davy Rizzio. He was a musician in the court of Empress Anna. He was a serf from Ukraine who sang in the court choir. And she was like,
just
exactly
like
like Rizzio. And she's like, look at this hot man with his incredible singing voice. I don't care that he is a peasant. I would like to be in love with this man. And Razumovsky, like the legend he is like, yes, this extremely hot, extremely charismatic royal woman would like to be in love with me. He does not want power. He does not want money. Later on in the story, other people in royal court will be like, would you like a title? Would you like to be a baron of something? And he's like, no, I just love Elisabeth. I don't really need any titles. I'm good. Just let me stay here with her. He's the Ken to Elizabeth's Barbie. He's just happy to be included. And he never betrays her ever in the rest of the story. He's just like her hot himbo husband with a great singing voice here to have a nice time.
Okay, so I'm just like, this is so in the pantheon of both my life experience and this podcast. I'm like, who? Rizzio is the closest I can think of, but that wasn't a romantic partner. That was a gay best friend. So this is like, what if Rizzio was also your lover? The closest I can think of in terms of this podcast is from the International season when I talked about Ronnie Ditta from Kashmir. She had Tunga, the buffalo herder.
I remembered him and I was like, it's like the buffalo herder. Guy.
Just a guy who's just like there and he's just like supporting her and like that's great. But he's also like smart and with it. And you know, this is what's his name? Alexei?
Yeah.
This is the relationship every strong person, whatever your gender is, I think deserves, you know, to just like someone who just like lets you shine. Someone who's just like, you know what, like it's the opposite of, this is like a couple years ago, Cardi B was, I think it was the Met Gala or something. She came in this amazing, it's like she was like Venus emerging from the seashells in this like wild outfit. And her goddamn Offset, her like baby daddy, she's on the red carpet and he just started showing up. He just started being in all the pictures with her because like he couldn't let her shine.
This is not about you. What reminds me of is Serena Williams' husband, whose name I don't know because he's Serena Williams' #1 hype man. And that's who this guy is. He's just like, you're so talented. You're so beautiful. You're so amazing. I am blessed to know you.
No, and his name is Alexis.
There we go.
No, it's, you know what, the vibe is definitely, so not Offset and Cardi B, it's Serena Williams' husband who's just like, he's just like, look at how great she is. I'm so lucky that she married me. I'm just gonna like make pancakes for our daughter and just like support her dreams. This is what I want for every single listener. Someone who is that for you. I want this. This is what I want for all of you. It's my dream.
And I extra love it because Catherine the Great story is better known generally, but she's well known for having like lots of lovers. She has a rotating cast of male favorites and they all suck so bad. They're all just like, but what if I was in charge? What if I was important? Why don't you love me enough? And I'm like, you had this guys like this were right here. You could have just like looked around a little bit and found a hot Ukrainian chorister and been like, done.
This is like, I'm really dwelling on this point because it's so great. And so it's the opposite of Mary Queen of Scots.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, how about this one guy who just like loves you and is cool?
The bar is so low for dudes in historical
Yeah.
stories that are nice that like I'm willing to spend 5 minutes talking about Alexei because I think this is great.
This is where, and you know, I haven't recently gotten any sort of like hate mail being like, accusing me of being, what's it called
A
when you hate
misandrist?
men?
Yeah.
Misandrist. I have in the past, but I'm just like, no, you know what? I like men
Yes.
like this.
Correct.
I don't hate men. I hate patriarchy,
Mhm.
but like, this, okay. I mean, at the end of this episode, we're going to do some scoring, but I feel like
I was really hoping we could award him something.
he is something. Alexei, you know what? Thank you. Thank you. You've redeemed my faith in men. Okay, Alexei. Great. And you know what? Good for Elizabeth not like having, you know, there's so many, again, I'm just dwelling on this point, but I will sit on this point and dwell on it. There's so many people who are just like, oh, here's this guy and he's shitty, but he's so nice to me or whatever. It's like, no. So many people, and I'm going to say like heterosexual women, settle for such shitty men.
Yes.
You know, there's like that famous picture of Hailey Bieber dressed to the nines, Justin Bieber in a hoodie with the cord tied, looking like he's angry he got pulled out of his like basement playing video games. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just like, this is her moment and this is what you're doing. It's like so many women settle for shitty men, but it's like, guess what there is out there? Not shitty men.
You just have to look around and wait until one of them shows
Be
up at your
okay with
house.
them. You know what? I'm going to tell you one more story about someone who I know. I won't say her name, but it's a person who I know in real life. And so she had, this is like when we're like in our early 20s. She'd had, you know, like various shitty boyfriends or whatever. And then this one guy, and who was really nice, who we kind of knew as a friend before. And they sort of hooked up. And then it's like, oh, is this going to turn into a thing? And then he was really nice to her. And she was just like, I don't know about this. He's being so nice to me. This is weird. There was like a snowstorm on Christmas, and he like went through the snow to like come to her house and deliver her a box of homemade cookies. And she was just like, what do I do with this? Why? And me and all of her friends were just like, you accept this love.
You deserve this and you should be delighted.
She was so confused and perplexed because it wasn't what she had thought relationships were like. And he was so kind and good.
She's like, this can't be right.
She's like, this feels weird. This feels wrong. And we're like, maybe lean into this a bit. Anyway, they're now happily married. They have 2 children. They've been together forever. But yeah, so just like actual nice people.
We love to see it.
We love to see it. We love to see it. I love to see a person who is strong enough in themselves to accept that love.
So everything was going great in Elizabeth's love life is what I'm getting at. Things were not going as great in her political life.
Who's the czar? It's Anna at this point?
Right now it's Anna, but Anna dies in 1740. So she had been on the throne for about 10, 12 years, and then she passes away. And Elizabeth is standing there like, okay, now's my time. Now has got to be my time to be Empress of Russia. Except it's not, because the person they picked to be on the throne next is Ivan VI, who is Peter the Great's great nephew and also a baby who's 2 months old.
Wait, so is this the grandson of the Down syndrome brother?
I believe so.
Because that's Peter the Great's brother, and then it's that brother's grandson.
But it's like not through Anna, it's through another one of his children who then went off to Germany, and there's the German princes involved again, so I lost track of the family tree at that point.
No, but speaking of them, you just said it was like 1740 something? 1740? Yeah, I was just looking at my spreadsheet again. And so this is around the same time the birth of the future Queen Charlotte. So just in terms of just like people in Germany doing shit.
Yeah, they're just like, there's so many of them. We can marry them to whoever we want. Yeah. So in a real Scotland move, they're like, baby king.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth is like, I'm 32 years old. I'm hot. Everyone loves me. I'm 6 feet tall. I have this incredible boyfriend. And also all of the soldiers in St. Petersburg think I'm the shit. So what does that all add up to? A coup.
Yes! I hoped you were going to say that. Okay.
She's like, all right, I'm going to go out into the streets of St. Petersburg with my hot boyfriend, and we're going to sneak into the army barracks.
Okay, because I think if you're sneaking into the army barracks, she's going to look very noticeable being 6 foot tall, unless she wears pants and looks like a man.
But that is, in fact, what Elizabeth decided to do was the opposite of that. Because what she did is she's got a giant 4-foot-long silver cross in one hand. She's got a floor-length gown. And on top of the gown, she has a full, like, army breastplate of, like, chainmail. And she just, like, kicks down the door into the regimental headquarters and is like, who would you like to be your empress? Me or that stupid baby in the Winter Palace? And the soldiers are like, you. We definitely want it to be you.
She kicks down the door, 6 feet tall. Like, fashion moment. Just like, listen up, bitches. We're taking over Russia. And they're all like, we will follow you, yes.
Literally. I didn't write down the exact words, but the sense of what she said literally was, who do you want to be your empress? Me or that illegitimate baby?
I feel like Alexei probably helped. She was like, Alexei, what do you think about this? And he was like,
perfect,
yes,
my queen.
Yes. And she's like, what if I hold this gigantic cross?
Yes.
He's like, yes.
We love this.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they go,
oh my God.
her and her brand new army, who's so stunned by how incredible she looks, storm into the Winter Palace. And what I extra love about her is that Ivan VI hostage takes his parents hostage, declares herself.
Wait, Ivan VI being the baby?
Takes the baby hostage.
She takes the baby hostage.
Declares herself Empress of Russia. No one dies. They don't kill anybody. They don't kill the baby. They don't kill the baby's parents.
Okay.
They're like, you're a baby. You're no threat to me. I'm just going to be empress now. Is that cool? They call this the bloodless coup, which is my preferred kind of coup. So.
That's amazing. So she puts on, I'm going to put part of this to the power of fashion. She puts on this outfit, stomps in. She's just like, I'm taking over. And everyone's just like,
yeah, of course. Look at you.
Yeah. Please.
Things don't end well in the story of Ivan VI, the baby who was no longer king. But I want to emphasize that was not necessarily Elizabeth's fault. What happens to him is she says, listen, I'm not going to kill you because you're a baby, but I also can't have you like running around trying to become Tsar again.
No, it's like a Mary QofS, Jane Grey scenario. You can't have like a possible other monarch alive.
So she absolutely Mary Queen of Scots is it. And just like, I'm going to put you and your parents in this highly fortified castle. And if you just stay there and live your life, I'm not going to kill you. If you escape, that's going to be a different story. But like, stay there and it'll be fine. But the rest of Elizabeth's life, Ivan stays there and probably doesn't have a very nice time because he's in prison. But he lives. Ivan does try to escape after Elizabeth's death. And he is killed by Catherine the Great, which is important to me to note that it was by Catherine and not by Elizabeth, because the TV show The Great would have you believe otherwise, and that's bullshit.
Wait, so the TV show The Great, I mean, full context, I've only watched the first episode of that for reasons we'll explain later. So on the TV show The Great, they claim that Elizabeth killed him?
On the TV show The Great, they claim that Elizabeth is keeping him in a secret room in the Winter Palace, and halfway through season 1, she cuts his throat with a knife. Which is bullshit!
In episode 1, Elizabeth is like skipping around blowing bubbles out of a bubble wand.
Yeah.
Is she just pretending to be silly?
No, she is a silly murderer. It is garbage.
Okay.
We're staying on topic. We're not getting down that rabbit hole. But I just wanted it known that if people in the States know about Elizabeth, they're like, oh, the ditzy Anne who killed Ivan VI. And I'm like, no, neither of those things are true. And I want that on the record.
Nope.
Anyway.
No. Yeah. And now we're just going to take a break for a word from our sponsors.
As a podcast network, our first priority has always been audio and the stories we're able to share with you. But at Realm, we also sell some pretty cool merch, and organizing that was made both possible and easy with Shopify. When you think about successful businesses like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, an often overlooked secret is the business behind the business that makes selling and, for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. That's because nobody does selling better than Shopify. It's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret that's definitely worth talking about is that Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. That's more happy customers and way more sales going. If you're hoping to grow your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, a founder of the Go Kid Go network. At Go Kid Go, putting kids first is at the heart of every show that we produce. That's why we're so excited to introduce a brand new show to our network called The Search for the Silver Lining, a fantasy adventure series about a spirited young girl named Isla who time travels to the mythical land of Camelot. Look for The Search for the Silver Lining on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.
People often look at me with confusion when I ask them what their only one in the room story is. They think it has to be like mine, where I went to a 600-person event and discovered that I was the only Black person there. I know. Horrifying, right? Hi, I'm Laura Cathcart-Robbins, and I am the host and creator of the podcast Only One in the Room. Every week, my co-host Scott Slaughter and I invite you to join us for an hour and lose yourself in someone's only one story. This podcast is for anyone who has ever felt alone in a room full of people, which is to say that this podcast is for everyone.
And we're back.
Because not only did Elizabeth not kill Ivan VI, her big hallmark of her rule is that her entire time as Empress, she didn't order a single death sentence. She did not command anybody to be killed. And is that a low bar? Yes. Is that a low bar for a ruler of the country of Russia in particular? No, that is not a common thing.
So it's not just that's interesting and different of her, but it also perhaps is not just she was just letting people run free who were traitors or whatever. It just speaks to the fact that no one was trying to make a coup against her because everyone is just no.
And why would you? She's got a giant...
She's so cool.
I mean, I'm sure some people did not love this, but she was the very popular daughter of the most popular czar at the time. So, legitimacy aside, people liked her pretty well.
And she also, she'd been around for so long. I feel the army took her side. She had scored up so much support from so many important people. And that's crucial for a successful coup attempt.
Yes. There's not any counter coups for the rest of the story. She's just kind of hanging out doing her stuff.
Yeah. So it's not just she just let everyone survive. It's people weren't raising arms against her. Or she had really good intelligence and stopped them before they did.
I don't know anything about her spy networks, but I have to believe that this bitch had spies. Oh. Come on.
Oh.
Yes.
Please. Yeah. Some sort of Russian flying squadron scenario.
Oh, I hope she had a flying squadron of sexy spies. So when I was introducing Elizabeth at the top of this episode, I said our bitch loved to party. And now that she is Empress, she has to throw her own coronation party. But when you come to a throne through a coup, the coronation is a really big deal, right? You're this is the first time everyone's going to see me as the ruler of this country. I need to make sure I look legit. I look amazing. And no one's looking at me ooh, you weird usurper. They got to be yeah, that's my girl. I want her. So she kind of pulled out all the stops for her coronation. And I love that for her. We have another fashion moment, fortunately.
I'm just waiting for you to say. Yeah, okay.
But first, I need to say that instead of having the Metropolitan of Moscow give her the crown and name her Empress of Russia, this bitch crowned herself, which I love.
Yes.
And not only did she crown herself, but she crowned herself with a crown that she had made just for herself. And the crown had 5,000 diamonds in it, which is a shit ton of diamonds.
That'd be so heavy, wouldn't it?
Ugh. And the outfit moment is she's I'm going to make myself this gorgeous gown. It's 4 feet wide. If you look at pictures of her at her coronation, I'm how did you fit into the church wearing this? It's enormous. It's silver silk brocade and gold lace, and it's huge. And she looks so good in it that every empress after her wore a dress that looked kind of like hers, that silver with the gold on top. They're yeah, that's the look. We should definitely be doing that. It's Victoria with a white wedding dress. They're shit, we should do that. Love that.
Here's what I'm picturing. I'm picturing two things. Firstly, I'm picturing her getting somebody to go and measure the width of the doors. And she's make my dress 1 millimeter less wide.
Correct.
Is that. Or the other thing I'm picturing is her showing up, being like, Then she stands sideways and goes, scooch, 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 and then has to come in sideways.
It would have been the most fucking dignified scooch you ever saw in your life.
Yep.
We love a scooch. She's also throwing parties all over the city. Balls, parades, operas, fireworks. My favorite part of the coronation ceremony, though, is that she has 2 fountains set up in the streets of Moscow. One of them shooting up red wine and the other one shooting up white wine. So everyone had a preference.
This is like, okay, first of all, iconic, yes. Christina of Sweden had a wine fountain at her coronation as well. So I'm always here for a wine fountain. Anyone out there throwing any sort of extravaganza, party, wedding, I don't care. Consider a wine fountain.
Consider. I mean, COVID-19's whatever, right? We just get to get everyone's germs. This is why everyone was dying of tuberculosis, by the way. They're just sticking their mouths on the wine fountain.
Drinking out of it like a water fountain. Yeah, okay.
So okay. That's her coronation moment. It lasts for 2 months, which, fuck yes.
Yes!
And then she's like, okay, maybe I should stop the party and like now. And for all the records that I can see, she did a pretty damn good job of it. She's very popular in like modern Russian history as like one of the better ones. I mean, she's against like people like Ivan the Terrible who just murdered people all the time. So like, again, the bar is on the ground. But she was very popular with people at the time because she started undoing some of those weird racist Europeanizing policies her dad put in place. Like, people in Russia really wanted to wear beards, and Peter was like, you can't wear a beard, that's uncivilized. And Elizabeth was like, you can wear a beard, I don't care, put your beards back on. And so that was like one of her first acts, and that was so smart on her part because everyone's like, we love this bitch, we would die for this bitch.
That's why nobody tried to get rid of her. They're all just like, she let me have my beard back. Like,
they're like, what's the thing that's annoying the people the most? Let's undo that. It's truly like, let's cancel student loans on my first day in office. And everyone's like, I would do anything for this person. And as her reign went on, like, I'm skimming a little bit because there's lots of European wars in her reign. And as you know, when I start to read about military history, I go directly to sleep. So I don't know exactly what happened there.
We got, I forget what it was. It was a comment somewhere, and somebody was just like, it was I think it was the Napoleon episode, and somebody was just like, they skipped over so much important stuff. And I'm like, yes.
Because we don't care.
Like all the wars. We on purpose. Yeah.
But so as Empress Elisabeth outlawed capital punishment for like crimes against the government, she really did not enjoy killing people, which again, so rare in Russian history that they don't enjoy killing people. It's really nice. She started advocating for a universal system of education, including for the serfs in Russia, the enslaved people. She did not try to outlaw serfdom. That would have been cool. But she was like, at least everybody should be able to read, including women and enslaved people. So like, she sponsored the first university in Russia, and she helped negotiate peace with Sweden. So she was like not going around starting new wars all that often. She did get Sweden. Yes.
So,
Sweden. In fact,
you and I both have fondness for Sweden and the history of Sweden.
We do. Is this adjacent to the ski revolution by any chance? Or
this is hundreds of years later. Yeah. But I just wanted to just shout out Sweden. The history is great. It involves skis.
We love
it. Great.
We love it.
Anyway, so I'm happy for peace with Sweden.
She did enter Russia into the 7 Years' War. Lana Wood Johnson, again, is screaming at me to research the 7 Years' War, and I did not. But I will say that I kind of love Elizabeth's petty reason for getting Russia involved in the 7 Years' War, which is that she thought Frederick the Great was a shithead and she didn't want him to have nice things, which is like why I would go to war. So like, he was so afraid of her.
Who is Frederick the Great?
He was the leader, I believe, of Prussia. He was one of those German guys, essentially.
Yeah. They're all called Frederick or George.
Yes. There are listeners who are yelling at me for getting that wrong, and I'm sorry, listeners, I don't know anything about Germany.
Well, I did earlier say that we were going to slander the United States, but I think we're also going to, when we don't know a thing, we're not going to pretend like we know a thing.
And what I don't know is the Germanic principalities, because there are, as I said, too many of them. So I'm getting back to the part of the story that I care about, which is all of the extravagant, dirtbaggy things that Elizabeth was getting up to at her court while the 7 Years' War was going on. And because I said this is a girl I wanted to go to the club with, the main reason I said that is because her court sounds like it was so much fun. Like, she reportedly owned 15,000 dresses, which, like, when you think about how much a single dress cost in the 1700s, and then you're like, no, she wanted 15,000 of them.
I'm thinking more about how long you would have to live to wear one dress each day, and I don't know, but that's impossible.
I think it's probably impossible.
Multiple outfit changes per day, I think, is what we're looking at.
Oh, for sure. Every time she walked through a door and did her little scooch, then she took the dress off and put on a new one. She had them shipped into to her directly from Paris so that she could wear them before the French people did, because she was petty, and we love that for her. She threw parties all the time, and apparently at every meal, she made sure that they served pineapples, which just, like, how did you get those in 1700s St. Petersburg, Russia? But she found a way. And it's so extra that I think it's delightful. She did, I will say, she was jealous in a kind of Elizabeth I way, where she didn't want anyone to be more beautiful than she was. And she would, like, have people at court whipped for wearing the same dress that she was going to wear, which, like, yikes, not great. But she also was, like, really generous to her ladies in waiting when they weren't stealing her clothes. She loved a wedding. She loved to pay for the weddings of everybody in her court and make them wedding gowns and give them dowries.
This is so Mary Queen of Scots coded. In fact, so much of this story makes me think of, like, what if Mary Queen of Scots had the support of anyone? What would she have been like as a queen? Kind of like this, I think.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Alexei Razumovsky, still right at her side, our boy, having a great time, not trying to get involved in politics. Again, doesn't give a damn about the 7 Years' War. His job, much like Davy Rizzio, to throw a really nice party.
Yes!
Yes, he's in charge of music and theater at court because he was a singer. And he's like, I got this. Let's go.
This is so perfect. It's so perfect.
I know. And what I love this detail is that at court, they called him the Night Emperor, which implies that they had a super secret sexy marriage. And he was like emperor, but only by night because he couldn't publicly be her husband.
Oh, because they weren't. Wait. I just assumed that they were married. But of course they're not, because he's this, like, peasant choir singer. Super secret sexy marriage. I bet they were.
And they probably had secret kids together. Like, it's very exciting. Also, I love that they called him the Night Emperor because that makes him sound like Batman. And I hope he had fun calling himself that, like, in the mirror.
I'm just thinking, if they had super secret kids, which I bet they did, this could be part of the dresses. She's just like, I need a new dress that makes me look not pregnant. I need a dress that makes me look not pregnant at 6 months, at 9 months. Guess what we're doing, everybody? Empire waistline.
Don't worry about it.
We're just having a moo-moo moment. It's cool, don't worry.
Moo-moo moment. Honestly, most of my life these days. I'm in my 30s. Every day is a moo-moo moment.
Yeah.
So whether or not she had illegitimate children with Razumovsky, she couldn't name those children her heirs, because she knew better than anybody else, if you have a technically legitimate child, this is not the country where that's going to go over well. And she didn't want to, like, introduce instability into this neat thing that she had just done.
This is interesting. So I was just getting so caught up on the partying and the wine fountains and the dresses. But yeah, so she's not married to him. She's not married. Well, I mean, secretly she's married to him. But so it's a bit of a Elizabeth I of England vibe, where it's just like, I'm this successful monarch, but, like, no one knows who the heir is going to be because I have seemingly no husband or children.
I think it was a pretty open secret that, like, this is obviously her husband, but in terms of, like, succession, that didn't help. And so there was like, okay, who's coming next? We just had 5 czars in 10 years. So, like, we got to name somebody.
Yeah, no, so the inconsistency, but that also just made me think, you know who Elizabeth had was Bobby Duds.
Yes, except didn't push his wife down the stairs.
This is like, Elizabeth was stuck with him, pushing his wife down the stairs, marrying her lookalike, much younger niece, just, like, shitty, having 7 sons all called Robert, versus Alexei is just like, what a better choice she made.
Yes. So it's heir hunting time, basically. And I'm going to give you one guess where Elizabeth goes to find an heir. Where has everyone been going all the way through this story to find the next person to the throne?
The German principalities?
The goddamn German principalities, yes. Very good. where she goes, actually, it's her sister Anna's child.
Oh, Anna.
The other Anna, not the emperor, but her Mary Bennett's sister who didn't like to leave the house, married that German guy, went to Germany, lived a quiet life, had a kid.
Oh, I forgot she even existed. But at the beginning of the story, yes, we talked about her. And you were like, we're going to get back to it.
Exactly what Anna wanted.
And now we're getting back to it. Okay. So Anna, who is also the daughter of Peter the Great, had children. So this is like the nieces and nephews of Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. And there's the one kid. I lied to you. I said there were 2 Peters. There's actually 3 Peters because this child is named Peter. He is extremely German, and he is a terrible, terrible child. He is a garbage person. He probably was psychopath is a hard word, but he didn't really have empathy for other people feeling pain.
Who is the person who we talked about in the Mary QofS series who, was it like to just like kill frogs or something? Was that Bothwell? It was someone like that.
That sounds like a thing Bothwell would do.
There's something, everyone's just like, this guy sucks. He like likes to whatever, take mice and like stomp on them or something. So, okay. So just like shitty from the get-go. Shitty as a child, just a shitty person.
Like he probably had abusive tutors and stuff in his childhood that like didn't help any of this, but I'm not interested in apologizing for this kid because he really, really sucked. So anyway, Elizabeth is like, this still makes sense for me.
This is the heir?
This is the heir. I don't think she knew how bad he sucked. And by the time she got him to St. Petersburg, she's like, okay, I'll be dead. It's fine. We'll go with this shitty child. And he grew up. She also had to find him someone to marry. And so looking for a wife for her heir, she went to
German principalities.
The German principalities. And she brought back a very smart young lady by the name of Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst. But this person converted to Orthodox Christianity, as was required for a wife of the future Tsar. And when you do that, you traditionally you change your name. And so she changed her name to Catherine in honor of Elizabeth's mother, the First Lady Empress of Russia. This person, the new Catherine, also going to be a Lady Empress of Russia. That's Catherine the Great, peeking in the very side of this story.
So the shitty heir is the Nicholas Hoult character from The Great.
Yes, technically.
Okay. Yeah.
So Elizabeth has now set up her succession. It's going to be Peter the Third and his wife, Catherine. They're all set. And now that she's done that, she can go back to having a grand old time at court. And the title of this section in my notes for the listeners is Pants On, Tits Out. So excited for this moment. Another costume moment. Elizabeth was very famous for throwing what she referred to as metamorphosis balls. And the gimmick of these balls were, you come dressed as the opposite sex. Whatever, gender roles, gender's a construct, fuck that. The men would come wearing dresses and women would come wearing pants. Everyone hated these. No one had a good time, especially not the men. They're like, this is the worst. I hate doing this. She has them every month. Fuck this. But she did them anyway, religiously. And because it is a documented historical fact that this bitch looked amazing in pants. And she just really wanted to wear pants. And she's like, everyone else can look terrible and have a terrible time. I'm going to look great.
Well, because she's like 6 feet tall. I figure a lot of that's probably like legs.
Yeah, legs for days.
Like, yeah. So like, she's just like, God damn it, I look good in pants. That'll be the theme of my party every day. Me in pants. Yeah. Pants party. Yes. Yes. Okay.
So I don't know if this happened at one of the pants parties, but I'm bringing it up because it's too thematically perfect not to bring up at this point in the story, which is that in 1756 or so, a very cool lady shows up at the court of Empress Elisabeth. She goes by the name Leah de Beaumont. She is a French noblewoman and the new lady in waiting to the Empress. Or is she? Because listeners of this podcast might know this French noblewoman better by the name of the Chevalier d'Eon, our favorite sword-fighting trans woman spying for King Louis XV. She spent like months at Elizabeth's court, allegedly spying for the French king, but mostly just like showing up and having a wonderful time and being Elizabeth's best friend.
I love this. I love this. It's a reverse Cecilia of Sweden, where somebody lands on the shores to be a spy of the queen, but then you actually become friends instead of
exactly
stealing her jewels and becoming a pirate. But so the Chevalier d'Eon, I do remember this from the episode, which, if people want to listen to that next, where I had Maya Dean was on talking about that. And so we talked about that, about how she went, like Le Chevalier, aka Leah de Beaumont, went to Russia, and there were these metamorphosis parties. And it was and I think surely it was partially at these parties that Chevalier d'Eon was just like, you know what, I like wearing a dress.
This is great.
This is me. But I think that's also where part of the Chevalier d'Eon thing, where it's all like the gender identity. It's just like, well, you were a spy as a woman, but like, was the woman persona you being a spy, or like, are you a woman? And the Chevalier is like, who knows?
Gender's a construct. Fuck you.
Yeah. So they became friends. I love that.
By all accounts, the Chevalier spent 6 months at Elizabeth's court. They got on really well. They were like besties. I hope they sword fought one time at a ball. No one tells me that happened, but I like to believe it happened.
It must have happened. And this is what I want the movie to be of,
Yes, I do. I want that.
Yeah.
Also, just a little petty note on this is that the king that the Chevalier was serving was the same French king who had turned down her hand in marriage earlier in this story, and I hope he fucking regretted it.
Yeah. Look at who he could have had.
This, Louis. Fuck you.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, this second part of my notes is just called death. So we are rapidly approaching the end of her story.
You know what? Every story ends this way.
But she lived a good long time, really. She ruled into her 50s, and she spent the last several years of her life in not great health. She had fainting fits and dizzy spells, and I don't know exactly what disease that might have been associated with, but in 1761, she had a stroke, and she knew, we're on our way out.
So she became empress when you said she's like in her 30s, I think. So she effectively was empress for like 20 years.
Yeah, she had a good 20-year reign.
A good long time, yeah.
Which, compared to everyone else in the story that made it for like 2, 3, 5 years, is like pretty good.
Yeah.
So on Christmas Day, 1761, she was 52 years old, and on her deathbed, she called 3 people to be with her while she passed away after doing her final prayers with her priest. Number 1, Peter III, the dickhead German. Number 2, soon to be Catherine the Great, his wife. So her heirs, that's nice. And number 3, super secret's husband, Alexei Razumovsky, holding her hand as she passed away.
Alexei.
She was buried in the Peter and Paul Cathedral in St. Petersburg, where all of the tsars and tsarinas have been buried ever since her dad built the city. I assume she rolls around in her grave every time anyone watches the TV show The Great, but I cannot confirm that.
More on that later. What is her legacy, or do you know?
I have a couple notes on her legacy. She's regarded in Russian history by Russians as one of the more popular imperial rulers. She's known for standing up for Russian interests in the 7 Years' War, which, again, I don't know anything about, but it sounds important. And also beloved for her decision to never sign a single death sentence. She built up a really strong cultural legacy in Russia. She ordered the construction of the Winter Palace that's there today. So that is that.
The Winter Palace from Anastasia, the animated movie?
The one that Dmitri lives in with his travel papers. Yeah. And it's also thanks to her that Catherine the Great came along and became Empress of Russia, and all of the dramatic imperial things that happened during her reign. She kind of picked Catherine out of nowhere. So she's somewhat responsible for that as well. She's not talked about, I think, as much as she should be in history, but I would say medium well-known and medium significant.
I wonder if it's like because she did a good job. People like talking about a messy monarch, and she just kind of like took control, and everyone's like, great. And then she was in control, and everyone's like, we love her. And then she died, and it's like, well, that happened. Like, there's not mess.
I will say I am sure there was mess, because empire generally is messy. I want to be clear that I'm not like supporting the Russian Empire in this story, modern Russia or past Russia. Like, I always feel the need to caveat that by saying, like, here is a story of a cool person in a deeply problematic empire. We are not pro colonizing the Balkans on this podcast, but as far as Russian emperors and empresses go, it's kind of a badass.
Well, and also I think like in her situation, she did the best anyone could have done, given the cards she was dealt.
She could have done more.
Basically.
She could have liberated the serfs. She could have like allowed Poland to stop being partitioned. Like that would have been nice. She could have let Ukraine be an independent country. There are lots of things she could have done. But were any of those particularly likely in her cultural time and place? No.
Would people have still supported her if she had made these sort of...
She probably also had no interest in doing those things, I will say. Like,
she wanted to throw parties. She wanted wine fountains. Like,
she wanted to wear a giant dress covered in breastplate armor and hang out with her hot secret husband. Like, that was the plan, mostly.
Are we ready to move on to the scoring aspect of this?
We are.
Okay, so I'm going to do the formality, but I think we both know where this is headed.
Yes, we do.
So one of the awards that we have is the Lady Jane Seymour Memorial Award for Outstanding Supporting Performance. That is for people who just like, for instance, in the Mary QofS story, Mary Seton got this award, you know, for just like always being with her, doing the switcheroos, helping her escape, doing her wigs. And I started this award because it's so rare that anyone in any of these stories has anyone who helps them ever.
Yeah.
There's like less than 10 or maybe about 10 people who've ever gotten this in like 100 plus episodes.
That's so sad.
That's why it's special when someone is actually good to somebody. And then the next tier recently invented is the Jeweled Tortoise Award for legendary friend or supportive behavior. And so that's like named after Davy Rizzio, who was this for Mary Queen of Scots. We have some other people. You know what? I'll just run down who's on this list. CM, who is the best friend of Hortense Mancini, is on this list. Dezio Azzolino, who is Christina of Sweden's like dirtbag Cardinal Rome friend, who like paid off her debts. Ludwig II is on here for Cece.
My boy, I love him.
And Dowager Empress Xian for Empress, I forget how you say it, Sichi from China. Anyway, so this is like the legend, and I feel like Alexei fits on this list as just like...
I want him to be on that list if you do. I'm aware I'm biased, but I think he is legendary Jewel Tortoise behavior.
I think it is because the fact that he was just legitimately there for her.
Even after she died, they were like, would you like lands and a title? And he's like, no, I just want Elizabeth back. I love her.
He was like the legitimate, but also the way that he threw the parties, you know, like they're just like a good partnership. What's his name? Alexei
Razumovsky. I will spell it for you later.
Okay. I'm spelling it insanely on my document. But let me see. He's the first romantic partner on this list. Everyone else was like a friend.
Should we retroactively put the buffalo herder on this list?
I only don't because I don't know enough about him. And that's not on him. That's just on the literature available about like medieval Kashmir.
Yeah, we don't know enough to know for sure, but I get good vibes from him.
Oh, he did as well. And he became like her like military guy. He was good at it. Tunga the buffalo herder. You know what? Tits Brigade, let me know. Do you think Tunga the buffalo herder deserves this promotion? Let me know.
Set up a poll in your Instagram stories.
Yeah, maybe I will. Okay, so then we get into the scoring of it all. And so the first category is scandaliciousness. Now, before you, I'm going to go with the numbers you suggest because you know the story better than I do. But to me, the scandal would be like a coup. Doing a coup is like very scandalous. And I wouldn't deduct points for it being a bloodless coup, but just doing a coup, taking over is pretty scandalous. I don't know, being the sort of illegitimate daughter is sort of scandalous. Having this lover who's like
a super secret sexy marriage
and potentially secret children, throwing the pants party, making everybody cross-dress. So yeah, I don't know, because on a scale of scandaliciousness, like doing a coup is great. Like that's high points right there. But I feel like, I don't know, like on a scale of like Lola Montez, like she's not
a mess.
Whatever. No, right. So the scandal is not, it wouldn't be a 10, certainly.
I think I think you get 5 automatically for a coup. That's kind of my own mental rating. Yeah. And then I'm giving her a couple extra for super secret sexy marriages, but I'm taking a couple away because her reign kind of went well. And if she had been a scandalous mess, we would have seen that in the mess of her time, you know?
Well, and even like she had a super secret sexy marriage, but it was just one. She didn't have like a string of lovers. That would have been more scandalous. She was like
this guy.
kind of in the best way, kind of boring scandal-wise. Because she just like knew what she was doing and was not a mess.
Right.
So
I'm thinking like a 7.
I'm good with a 7. I think 7's good. Because a coup is like quite a significant scandal thing. Yeah. The next one, though, is scheminess. And I see high scores for this.
I see high scores for schemes, if only because a successful bloodless coup has to take some planning.
And long-term planning as well. Like, I think she was on the scene for so long, like and people liked her, and that would partially just because she's cool, but also because she's like scheming. Like, she knows who to get on her side, who she needs to have the support of to make this coup happen.
And when she was planning for her own succession, she's like, what's the way that I can do this that will make everybody happy? That can be the most legitimate person closely related to me, not going into that other weird branch of the family tree. But like, my sister's kid, this kid will do. I don't have a legitimate child, technically. So how can I solidify this? That seems like a smart strategic move, even if it ended kind of badly. How was she to know he was a shit?
Yeah, so scheminess in this context just means like she's just smart. She knows her shit. She has good plans. And again, that's not like exciting necessarily because she just like is so smart. But that represents high scheminess.
I'm thinking an 8.
I think an 8 is certainly fair. The next one, this will be tricky, is significance.
My gut is to score her mid to low here.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was very significant for the 20 years that she ruled. I don't know that her rule necessarily like changed the shape of the empire the way that her father's did or that Catherine did. There's a reason that the Great is not on the end of her name because she did a pretty good, okay job. But I also feel like 20 years where you were not being ruled by a crazy megalomaniac is like a nice thing that we should all aspire to.
Yeah, because those 20 years could have been utter chaos if it was just baby czar after baby czar and just like, like that created, I would presume it created some level of stability that then Catherine the Great would sort of step into.
Right. I'm thinking like a 5.
I think that's where I was thinking as well, like a 5. And then this is interesting as well. So the sexism bonus, which is just like how much did sexism hold her back? And once she became Empress, I would say not at all.
Yeah. And honestly,
but the fact that it took her that long.
Because she was illegitimate, not because she was a woman. Like they put another woman on the throne instead of her.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it got in her way that much at all, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
there was the thing, she got in trouble for having the affair with a soldier.
But that was because she didn't tell the Empress about it, because she was like, again, that was like a rank thing, not so much of a gender thing. I think probably no one gets a 0. And I'm sure there are like things that have happened to her that would have been different if she might have been more powerful and more influential if she had been a man, because other people would have taken her more seriously, possibly. But yeah, I don't think hers is really a story of sexism so much as it is a story of like, fuck you, I'm gonna do what I want.
Yeah, I do want to clarify because somebody sent me a message a bit ago. Again, there's like new listeners and they're catching up and stuff. And so for a long time, I used to say like everybody gets at least a 5 for sexism. But as the show goes on, it's just like not everyone does because I think like Lola Montez,
0 for
sexism was not really an issue for her. That was low. I was looking through my scores. Empress Sisi, I think sexism wasn't really her issue either. Like
Queen Charlotte of England, 0.
Yeah, well, exactly. So I do want to say, like, I used to say everyone gets at least a 5, no longer true. So I don't know. I don't think sexism was really an issue for her.
I want to say a 3.
Okay, a 3 feels fair to me. So I'm just adding this up to make sure I have this right. Lana Wood Johnson rolling her eyes from afar as I add this up on my fingers.
I'm going to guess. I'm aware I could count in my head, but I will say to the listeners that every time I guest star on an episode like this, the person I'm scoring always gets a 27. So I'll be delighted if Empress Elisabeth gets a 27.
Here's what it is. It's a 23.
Okay.
But do you know who else has a 23? Lola Montez.
All right.
You just said you think when you're on here it's a 27. It's not, Allison. It's a 23.
Is it a 23? God damn it.
Because Christopher Marlowe, 22.5. Lola Montez, 23. Catalina de Erauso, 23.5.
Okay, I take it back. I'm a 23 girly. It's good to know.
23 is where you are. So usually it's because really high scandal, low significance. This one was more sort of like medium Well, this one was high
High
scheminess,
schemes,
but
mid-scandal.
it's right here in the Allison Epstein grotto. I don't know what to call it.
I love that. This is where all of my bitches live.
Exactly. They're neighbors with each other, just having a really good time partying.
Can you imagine being at that party with all of my 23s? Incredible.
23 and me.
Oh,
So that is where she lives. That's lovely. And if people want to see the whole scale of who scored where, it's on my website, which is vulgarhistory.com. And this is where I'm going to say, well, first of all, calls to action. First of all, Allison, tell everybody about your book again. It's been so long since we talked about it.
I know. If you remember from almost an hour and a half ago, I released a book this week in the US and Canada. It's called Let the Dead Bury the Dead. It is alternate history, 19th century Russia. If you are into Russian women kind of making shitty choices and fucking shit up, much like Empress Elisabeth, that happens to a great extent.
I have a question. Alternate history Russia, because you use a different branch of the family. Is it a branch we talked about?
It is not.
Okay, so you invented a whole different brand?
I did. I splintered off because I was like, I don't want to go into all. I did not want to go into the German principalities is the real answer.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But it's set during the same time period as when Elizabeth was around?
No, it is set in 1812, which is exactly after Napoleon has just failed to conquer Russia. So if you would like a little bit of Napoleon slander sprinkled into the book, there is that as well.
Oh, that's true. Trigger warning whenever Allison is anywhere.
Trigger warning, Napoleon.
Napoleon slander will occur. Okay, so your book, Let the Dead Bury the Dead. People can buy it in Canada and the US. Other places, stay tuned.
Or get creative.
or message Allison. When you get your hands on your copy, whether it's from the library or you purchase a copy or whatever, there's the Vulgar History Book Club Experience is starting up today. So if you go to vulgarhistory.com/book club, all the information will be there about how we're going to be doing this book club, which is basically just Tits Out Brigade talking about this book. Kind of, you'll see. It'll all be there. vulgarhistory.com/book club. And then we're having our live show, which is coming up this Saturday, if you're listening to this when this episode is new. Saturday, October 21st, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. So again, Google that with your own city where you live and see what time that is for you. But it will be available after the fact as well to watch on video. And to find that, you just go to YouTube and look up Vulgar History. And it'll be there under the live events. And Allison, this is our fifth call to action. So here's the thing. We mentioned The Great, the TV show, several times in this episode. And I'm introducing a new thing, which is Vulgar History, the After Show, which is where when I have a guest on or I'm talking about something and to delve into it in the episode would completely derail things, we're going to do that in the after show. So everybody who's on Patreon, who's at the Patreon $5 or more level, can now go there and Allison is going to talk about The Great in depth.
Every time I said I can't get into that here, I'm going to get into it there.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/AnnFosterWriter, so there you get early ad-free access to all the episodes there. We also have bonus episodes for everybody at the $5 or more. Bonus episodes like this, the after show. Allison talks about The Great. Anyway, so that's there. And then also on the Patreon, there's a new thing. We have chats. Those just got invented. So there's like an episode discussion chat for people who are on the Patreon. Anyway, we have a Discord there. Lots of stuff going on. And then also making sure I remind everybody of all the things. Allison, your newsletter.
We got too many calls to action in this episode. Pick whichever ones speak to you. I have a newsletter. It's called Dirtbags Through the Ages. And every 2 weeks, I feature a person who did dramatic and or shitty things in history. There was an Empress Elisabeth issue that just came out yesterday because I had already done all the research for this show. But most of the time, there's not a direct overlap. You can find that if you just Google Dirtbags Through the Ages. I am on Substack, and that's the easiest way to find me.
Yeah. And then me/this podcast, we have our website, which is vulgarhistory.com. There's a form there where you can contact me if you want to yell at me for slandering the United States, although you were warned. Or if you want to say nice things to me, you can do that there also. And you can also email me, vulgarhistorypod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @vulgarhistorypod. Honestly, there's too many social media things, but if you're on a social media thing, if you look up Vulgar History, chances are I'm there. And Instagram is where most of the action is happening. Oh, we also have merch available.
Unlike John Knox.
Oh my gosh. Merchandise he did not make. Merchandise have I made. And I think since the last recorded, we have a new design in the store designed by honestly, I don't, if someone is the artist, then they're not my muse. Am I the muse? Jan Jupiter, who is my frequent collaborator for merch designs, made a John Knox shirt just in time for Halloween. That's the ghost of John Knox saying, "Whores."
It's incredible.
It's amazing. So you can get whores on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, etc. And that was very much the Tits Out Brigade really demanded that.
It was not a request.
It was just like, this has to happen. And I was like, this has to happen. And Jan, even though they were busy with other stuff, was just like, they're really into Halloween stuff. So they're like, I will make time for this. And so
and they did an amazing job.
It's amazing. It's a little ghost with a beard on and the little hat that he's always wearing. And he's pointing like he's always pointing. And then we also recently, Siobhan Gallagher, who I also collaborate with on merch sometimes, she just did a cute new one that says Spiteful Hag, which is sort of another thing that people like to have on their merch. Anyway, so the merch store, vulgarhistory.com/store, is the one that's best for US people. And if you're somewhere else in another country, we have a Redbubble store as well, which is just vulgarhistory.redbubble.com. And I think that's all of my announcements. I'm going to be back. You're not going to be back next week. You're busy promoting your book, but you're going to be all over the place.
Yes, I will. And if I happen to be coming to a place near you, you can find out on my website, which is AllisonEpstein.com.
But yeah, in terms of the people listening right now, hope a lot of you will all be there on Saturday for our Instagram Live talking about the Mary QofS movie and all of the denim outfits, the hairstyles.
There's so many fanny packs in this film. I didn't remember them.
The prosthetic noses.
We can't get into it now. We got to save this for Saturday.
Yeah, so that's the tease for Saturday. Anyway, but if you want to hear Allison talk about the great, then just pop over to Patreon because we're going to record that right now. Okay, everybody. Thank you, Allison, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody, pants on. Just be like Elizabeth. Just pants on, tits out, holding a giant cross, kicking down doors. That's the vibe. Vulgar History is hosted, written, and researched by Anne Foster and edited by Christina Lumagi.
Welcome to the small town of Chinook, where faith runs deep and secrets run deeper. In this new thriller, religion and crime collide when a gruesome murder rocks the isolated Montana community. Everyone is quick to point their fingers at a drug-addicted teenager, but local deputy Ruth Vogel isn't convinced. She suspects connections to a powerful religious group. Enter federal agent V.B. Laureau, who has been investigating a local church for possible criminal activity. The pair form an unlikely partnership to catch the killer, unearthing secrets that leave Ruth torn between her duty to the law, her religious convictions, and her very own family. But something more sinister than murder is afoot, and someone is watching Ruth.
Chinook, starring Kelly Marie Tran and Sanaa Lathan. Listen to Chinook wherever you get your podcasts.
Nowadays, trends and news cycles change faster than we can blink. But there are some things that withstand the test of time. And if you're looking for a connection to something timeless, and maybe also a glimpse of life at a slower pace, I believe everyone can relate to the very human experiences explored in Jane Austen's novels. And that's where I come in. My name is Alison Larkin. I'm a writer, comedian, and narrator and host of the Jane Austen podcast with Alison Larkin. I spent a lot of my childhood in the part of England where Jane Austen lived and wrote, and now that I live in the States, nothing gives me a sense of homecoming quite like narrating her books. On this show, you'll listen to award-winning narration. I'll give myself a pat on the back for that. As well as conversations with actors, writers, and other fascinating people who all share a passionate love for Jane Austen. So please, join me as we embark on a wonderful journey through Jane Austen's work. Be sure to listen and subscribe to the Jane Austen podcast with Alison Larkin, wherever you get your podcasts.